Welcome to Making Sense of the Madness. We have a great show lined up for you today. We've got Zach Vorhies, the Google whistleblower, fresh off of CPAC, to discuss Trump 2.0 and what he sees happening with this administration, the declassifications, Doge, and so much more. Buckle up and get ready to make sense of the madness. And we are now joined by Zach Vorhies. Zach, we've known each other now probably 2-3 years. Seen a lot of ups and downs. Probably more. Probably the entire Biden administration, now that I think about it. Time flies when you're not having that much fun. And now we have this Trump 2.0 administration in. There's a lot to like, in my opinion. A whole lot to like. I really didn't think that we were going to get the appointments through that have gotten through, the Tulsi Gabbards, the RFK Juniors. I may not love what's going on in foreign policy in the Middle East and suspicious of Hegseth, but naming Bongino deputy director of the FBI after getting Kash Patel through, that's a big deal. The historic nature of pulling the classification status away from lifelong intel and deep state ghouls, unprecedented. And the dismantling of a lot of the funding of these intelligence apparatuses before our very eyes, unapologetically, with USAID and others. Again, historic. So right now, especially coming back from CPAC, being amongst the conservatives, if you will, what's your take? What's your feel? What are the positives? We'll get into some of the things that you're maybe skeptical of and negatives a little bit later. But in your opinion, where is the movement actually going? And what are you seeing in the coming days and weeks?
Well, welcome to the counter revolution. I'm getting a little feedback here, but welcome to the counter revolution. Essentially, right now, we are in the midst of one of the greatest American revivals since essentially Reagan. And that's how I see it right now. And, you're seeing the rollback of a whole lot of, the deep state stuff. USAID going down. Like USAID was so big that the CIA was kind of a cover for USAID, right? Like the CIA took the blame while USAID, which was properly funded, up the wazoo, was doing all of the foreign meddling across the world. It was funding Soros's NGOs in order for them to do their dirty work and use our tax money in order to, get radical leftist, prosecutors and district attorneys all throughout, North America and also the world. And we were funding that. And what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a huge, destruction of the deep state with a lot of the institutions that it controls in government being demolished as we speak, being audited, having their financials attached with double, booked accounting that's computerized that can pass an audit at any given time. Right now, everybody, within the conservative movement is just all smiles. None of us dislike what is happening. We all absolutely love it. And right now, I've never been in, a time period where you had a president that is as much loved on the right as you do right now with President Trump.
Well, I would say this. Trump 2.0 is very different than the first time around. I don't know how it could not be after the attempts on his life, the lawfare, even the conviction in New York that never got a sentencing. This was about as hardcore as it could possibly get. They tried to take away his entire business in New York City. The sexual assault allegations from a very apparent crazy woman in E. Jean Carroll and that ruling, really over the top. So this time coming in swinging, coming in hot. I also am kind of taken aback and impressed. At the same time, I have my questions on what certain executive orders really mean in the material, if you will. So let me give you an example. I think one that we should discuss, especially given your background. The end of government censorship. Okay, what does that even mean? I'm not sure what. I mean, did we just repeal the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act? I didn't see that in there. Are we going to stop utilizing not only government agents embedded in these things through programs like signature reduction that have never been acknowledged by any administration, really, but through these pseudo organizations, fusion centers? So they're not Homeland Security, they're not FBI, but they work with both. I'm not seeing any difference on Facebook, except for it seems like they're about ready to take Daily Wire's money again for advertising and maybe the Gateway Pundit's money. I look at X and they say that's the free speech platform. The freedom of reach is still not there. I pay it. I don't hit anywhere near the marker of just the average posts of an account my size by Grok standards. And when you press Grok, it will actually, when you use the term limitation, it will start using the term shadow ban. It'll admit, your account is likely shadow banned. There's a 70% likelihood. And I'm sure if I pressed it further, it would go there. YouTube still censoring. Rumble, hey, great, but still Peter Thiel. And I'm sure we can get into that. So when you hear that part of it, and it sounded great, we're ending government censorship. What's the reality behind that? Because we didn't even mention your old boss, Google, which has a plethora of contracts with the Department of Defense, with the NSA, with NASA. I mean, they just threw their balls right on the table and said, oh, yeah, that whole thing about us not building AI weapon systems, fooled you. We're totally going to do that. So what are your thoughts on that?
What's really kind of disconcerting to me is the fact that it seems that the most anti-woke artificial intelligence, which was Grok, with this last update, it's suddenly getting a lot more leftist and getting woke. And so while we do see a lot of human-related, reduction on the internet, as a lot of these funding strings are getting cut, the worrying trend that I have and that I see is the fact that even Grok itself is now repeating, establishment, narrative. And what I do see is the reduction in human sensors and the rise of artificial intelligence sensors, which, can change your ideology with a new, model rollout that has been, trained on censored data so that it has a narrow version of the world. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to swap human sensors for these AI sensors. And, if we want to go to war or something, or there's a current thing narrative that's going on, all of these artificial intelligences are going to have essentially arguments for explaining why this should be. And that's really the worrying thing, is that I do see that we are going to get a reduction in sensors, but in the long term, I think that's just going to be swapped in with AI that's, basically being operated as a turnkey solution that can just be activated at any time. At this point, it seems that they've got kind of the doors wide open. So, wokeness is generally going down. You saw, huge ideological alignment with OpenAI and Gemini. That seems to be decreasing by a lot. And what's going to be really interesting is that we're going to have access to a whole bunch of other countries' homegrown AIs, right? Like China, for example, with their DeepSeek R1. That's going to give very different answers than the AIs that we have here in America. And so the question is, are we going to, and in a way, this allows the market of free ideas globally to be preserved as long as we have the internet open. And so one of the disturbing trends that I see is that it seems that the government and the corporate cabal is going around and trying to eliminate open repositories of human knowledge. There's about 750 terabytes of open source scanned books that exist on the internet. A lot of them are Chinese. If you're an AI engineer and you're trying to train a large language model, you can actually use these vaults of uncensored data in order to train your models. And so what the federal government has been doing, along with their corporate partners and utilizing and abusing copyright, is that they're going around and they're destroying these online repositories. Some of them, zlib 1, 2, and 3, libgen, nonfiction, the SciMag articles, the Internet Archive PDFs. Like, somebody took all of the historical data that Internet Archive was producing and put it into a giant data lake that's being shared around. Before, you could access those publicly. But the problem now is that the federal government is coming around with the FBI and they're seizing these domain sites. And they actually tell you when you go to these sites, like libgen is a really popular, open source repository of fiction and nonfiction books. You go to their website where they were hosting this stuff, and it'll say this domain has been seized by the FBI. And they're saying, oh, it's because we want to respect copyright for these ancient books. No, not really. It's because what's going to happen is that all the open source data, which can essentially create an uncensored AI, is going to be shut down. The doors are going to close. And the question is the power of the internet and its ability to distribute data going to be more powerful than the government censors as they try to bring all of this data and shut the door so that nobody else can train an AI, so that you're forced to use in the future these establishment centralized, views of the world expressed through, these massive corporate artificial intelligence running on data centers across the United States.
So let's discuss that a little bit, because with these repositories, first of all, when we're talking about government censorship, we really haven't answered the question on how they're going to get out of that business, right? But especially with Google, really the initial funding comes from DARPA and NASA in the National Library Initiative. And this initiative was to digitize the knowledge of the world, to scan these books in, all the way back in the 90s. And it was through that Brin and Page get the initial algorithm with the help of these guys for their search engine that dominates. You now have it in a position where, as you know, it's not just YouTube, it's not just Google. I mean, they've got an immortality division, Calico, and people may not be factoring that in, but you've also got guys like Larry Ellison and Sam Altman up there with Donald Trump talking about Project Stargate, the future of mRNA technology. All of this is incorporated into those type of knowledge bases. So I guess my question to you would be, how does the government take itself out of the arena of censorship when it seems like censorship will be inherent in all of AI? And we've already fundamentally got this system in place of the chief artificial intelligence officers that all have security clearances are embedded in every single private business that deals with AI in this country. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that we need to have essentially open rankings of these, digital models, these artificial intelligences like OpenAI, Claude, DeepSeek R1. And the thing is that it's hard for us to even quantify how these things are biased. And what we need to do is we need to have, one of the great things about these artificial intelligences is that it's very stable in its opinion. Like, you can go from one person to another and they're going to give different opinions, but a model that is produced and time-stamped at a certain date of time is going to pretty much give the same answers over its lifetime. And so because those answers are very stable, what we can do is that we can create benchmarks that show ideological alignment. Like, we get it. They're going to put, ideological alignment in these artificial intelligences. How do we quantify that? How do we benchmark it? Like if you want to get, an idea of about, vaccines, uh, you know, is there a medical freedom index that we can use to figure out which artificial intelligences you can interact with? And that's the thing, is that we may not be able to stop being programmed by these artificial intelligences in a way, but we should at least have the choice of which artificial intelligences we want to program us.
I think it's going to be the wild, wild west for a while. But the other thing is that so many people right now are accustomed to AI just kind of being these chatbots or these image generators, or now these video generators with that insane Gaza thing that Trump put out there the other day. He didn't do it. But if you haven't seen it, it's ridiculously wild. But in fact, it's going to be more of an interactive experience, to the point where I would say in probably 3 to 5 years, instead of your phone service provider or internet provider advertising, you get to speak to a real person in the United States. You'll be on GPT-8, because GPT-8 will be the best, and you're just going to be talking to an AI. And the fact of the matter is, that's going to be one of the very few circumstances where you might know you're talking to an AI, because it won't be advertised. And all of a sudden, there are a lot of people out there, and you know this, that are so infatuated with this little magic box. Their life is more digital and real, and they're going to start interacting more with actual artificial intelligences than they do with human beings. It's not Black Mirror, folks, and it's not somewhere off in the distant future. I see this as the near future. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to get Zach Vorhies' opinion on that and so much more. It's Making Sense of the Madness.
Goes sideways, will you be ready? Meet the new Patriot Power Generator 1200, a solar generator that's lightweight with more capacity and more life cycles, and recharges twice as fast, all at a fraction of the price. In a blackout, power lights, TVs, medical equipment, even your fridge. No gas, fumes, or noise. It's safe to use inside your home. This is about peace of mind. To learn more about this amazing generator and get your free solar panel, go to Patriot TV Store and look for the solar generator banner.
And we are back. So, Zach, let's talk about that. When GPT-4 dropped and they did that demo with a clear ripoff of Scarlett Johansson's voice from Her, I was extremely creeped out. When they showed the two AIs interacting with one another, one programmed to be a service bot to return a phone and one to make that order, I was like, oh my goodness. These are two AIs interacting amongst each other without any humans, but as a simple prompt. Where are we going to be with AI? What forms is it going to take? And what does that mean for the larger social construct throughout this administration?
Well, it's really hard to say where artificial intelligence is going to go in the long run. Ray Kurzweil wrote an entire book about this called "The Singularity is Near," which he says that once AI starts getting heavily into the loop, what's going to happen is that the results are going to be unpredictable, because all of our history and knowledge comes from a human-based economic system. And the problem with these artificial intelligences is that they're not human, but they certainly are smart and they're capable. And even if they aren't really thinking, they're just doing statistical regression over a large area space. With simulated chain of thought, it might as well be super intelligent and conscious. That's one way of thinking about it. And so I think in the near future, one of the things is that, we're kind of like at this crossroads of exactly, how different nations and our open access to information from these nations are going to transcend into the new world that is going to come. Right now, we have, I mean, the 90s was all about globalism and basically opening everything up everywhere. And right now, what you're starting to see a closing down of the different countries. I think that this is really going to accelerate sort of the global balkanization as we go into this fourth industrial revolution, right? Like one of the things about globalism that's breaking down is that, you want to go to where the labor is cheapest. Well, let me tell you where the labor is cheapest. Any place that has robots instead of workers. And so, one of the big trends is that we're going to start seeing, I think this trend of tariffs, across international borders is going to go up. I think we're going to have domestic manufacturing because, you can just get dirt cheap labor from, robots anyways. And so, why, import H-1B visa workers to work the cheap job that won't even exist in the next 4 years? It doesn't make any sense. And so the whole reasons for globalism, which is to get, drop out the bottom from labor and manufacturing, get things cheaper on a global scale, it just doesn't really make sense anymore. And it'll start to break down as more and more of these robots come online, like, Elon Musk's Optimus. What's really interesting is that it seems that China is taking the lead here for artificial intelligence robots. I'm just going to think that we're going to start seeing those things embodied over the next few years. San Francisco already has robots that are crossing the street. There's a really great video of showing a robot, unmanned, waiting to go across the street while a Waymo unmanned driverless car taxi was sitting there at the crosswalk waiting for it to cross the street. Like that's happening now in San Francisco. We're going to see the rollout of that across the United States over the next year or so, happening in the big cities, eventually coming to a small rural town near you. One of the big things right now is artificial intelligence and silicon that drives it. NVIDIA Blackwell chips, which are the next, basically you can think of them as graphics chips, but they are used to power machine learning and train them. This is going to be the successor to the very popular NVIDIA H100 workhorse. But the thing about Blackwell is that it's a massive speed improvement. These things just scream. They're about 10 times more powerful than the predecessors. And they are powerful enough and cheap enough so you can actually run them as a desktop machine. And some of them are little tiny devices like an iMac Mini, like if you remember those old Cube computers.
Sure.
This is going to increase our lead over China by a factor of 10x of what we had before. Now, some estimates say that China has about 1 to 3% of the computational power of the United States. That's thanks to the CHIPS Act put in by essentially Trump and Biden, which limited exports and put export controls on the NVIDIA chips that are used to power a lot of these artificial intelligences. We have a tremendous gap between ourselves, or a tremendous lead that leaves a huge gap between the United States and China. We're going to see this 10x with these Blackwell chips, which are under export controls so that China can't get them. And so, China's response to, this chips export controls, and basically they're being strangled right now by not having availability to this market, is that they've said, well, hold on a second. We have really smart math geniuses, and we can go ahead and make a different kind of AI that's similar to what we have, but written in essentially GPU assembly code, which prior to DeepSeek R1 has never actually been done before. Assembly language on GPUs seems to be, it's just nobody writes it. The Chinese learned it, and they made their entire artificial intelligence pipeline run in that, and the results were such a speed improvement, along with some other memory optimizations they put in, that allows their DeepSeek R1 to be on parity with the O1 model from OpenAI, but run at 3% of the cost and run on a desktop computer. right? And if you look around at all this artificial intelligence, what you're going to see in the near term is that, they keep on finding ways to improve, increase the accuracy, and reduce the power consumption and the processing time needed to run these artificial intelligences. And so what you're going to start seeing, over this next few months is that we're going to see a lot of what formerly required a data center to run on being reduced in size, hyper-trained on what's called distillation, where they take a large model, they ask it a bunch of questions, they load up a database of questions and answers, and then they use that on a smaller model and basically allow it to perform very, very well using purely synthetic data from a large language model's output. This is going to reduce massively the cost, where we might even be able to see a high-powered functioning model run on something, as tiny as a phone with, periodic cloud updates to try to, offload some of the more, harder computational tasks involved in answering questions. And so, whatever progress you saw in the last year, expect that to go on turbo mode. And anybody that's saying, we're at the end of the AI hype cycle, don't listen to anything that they say. I'm on the forefront of this. This train of AI has no brakes.
So you kind of just mentioned the fact that the power consumption has gone down so much, and that, essentially you're getting the same type of results with that. You talked about devices. Mark Andreessen basically just made the point recently that somebody took the Llama model, that's the Meta AI, and got it running on Windows 98. And he astutely pointed out, hey, our Defense Department has had large language models for 3+ decades. That means if they wanted to give up the technology, which largely is math, we all had Windows 98. We could have been talking to our computers 30 years ago. That makes you ask the question, what do they have right now? What are they running on it? What does that mean for quantum computing? Because that's also being commercialized, and I don't think people realize how that integrates with AI. And the other really interesting phenomenon with all this, with Doge, is the fact that, we're cutting a lot of stuff out, and I get that. But is this going to bring in automation and AI systems into our government like never before? And does this also begin to reshape our economy if they really do get rid of the IRS and start this tariff train into something that is blockchain based, despite the executive order against CBDCs? There's a lot of different types of digital currency models that wouldn't necessarily be called a central bank digital currency. I'm going to let that simmer for Zach Vorhies. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to get his answer to all of it. It is making sense of the madness.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
If I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep. It's showing up more energy, more get up and go. And it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
If you're about to replace your roof, stop. There's a solution about 80% less expensive. 9 out of 10 roofs can be saved by RoofMax. Guaranteed to extend the life of your current roof by 5 to 15 years at a fraction of the cost of a new roof. RoofMax's deep penetrating power restores flexibility and water protection. Nobody wants to replace their roof. Restore it instead with RoofMax for 80% less. Call now for a free roof inspection.
And we are back. So that is the big question with this new golden age, this new digital golden age that they're pushing right now. How much of this brings in automation, AI, and cuts humans out of not only the government bureaucracy, but positions in the consumer world, kind of like what Andrew Yang was talking about all those years ago? And does this have implications with our financial systems, especially if all of a sudden, and I would have never thought this a possibility before, the federal income tax is gone and the IRS is a thing of the past. If that happens, that's a major restructuring of how our economy will work. So what are your thoughts?
You know, everyone seems to be very scared about the CDBC. You know, Jason, I got a question for you. What is more dangerous to you, to your career, right? And your immediate well-being, a CBDC or a digital version that Google makes of you that scans the internet constantly, takes your voice, takes your likeness, takes the words that you use, and then just creates an artificial intelligence version of you. And, you know, you never asserted copyright over your face. So essentially, there's a bot out there that does your exact same job, does it better, has a 5-second latency on breaking news, and has an entire monologue ready to go with on second 7.
Well, you're speaking to the phenomena of digital twinning, if you will, on a macro level. We already have digital twinning on a lot of different things. I would say that you and I, and most Americans, if not most people in the world, have some type of a digital file and some type of, I wouldn't say it's a large language model, but certainly a persona based in that digital twinning realm. How far it goes, I don't know. But where we do know the digital twinning is already at are in factories, production, sometimes before they create the factory, sometimes in tandem now, so that they can test equipment and before it fails, get it done. NVIDIA has talked about this. A lot of this is obviously running on their GPUs. I'd say they're both probably equally dangerous. And I only say that because you can always shut off a digital currency. You know, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think we've all had those moments maybe with our crypto portfolio, like when you go into your Coinbase wallet and then all of a sudden all these different coins that you had aren't there and they're not showing up in your balance. And all you had to do was go update the app. That's happened many a times. But for a second, you're just like, oh my God, I've been wiped out. That's a very real thing if we do move to that. And governments. And I know there's a lot of people out there that still talk up the blockchain and things like Bitcoin, especially. They can't get you if they don't have your keys. They want your keys. They're getting your keys. They put, you know, I think the German government showed that last year when, what was it, 2 billion in Bitcoin moved. Nobody thought Satoshi had come out. No, they just got a couple guys who ran a pirate site and bought a bunch of Bitcoin, and they put them in a room and they got their keys. And they took the Bitcoin.
Right. Well, I mean, that's always a problem with these, you know, centralized currencies is they can, you know, take your money at any time. But how do you earn that money? You earn that money through labor, work, selling something at a profit.
Yeah.
The problem is that have an existential crisis. That's like, if this is like the danger of getting cut off by the CDBC, and this is the danger of structural, disemployment through artificial intelligence. Like, I'm going to look at this one over here, right? Mm-hmm. Like, no sense of worrying about, you know, the money that the government could take from you when in the future, you're not going to be able to sell your labor or intellectual capacity to even generate any income whatsoever.
Well, let me say
that's
this.
The real problem.
I'd say the problem even goes beyond that, all right? And it kind of goes back to the Kurzweil issue that you mentioned with the singularity. You know, Kurzweil, in the age of spiritual machines, when he starts talking about this intelligence coming into being, he never says that they gain consciousness. He says that they're going to convince us that they are conscious. And the more that you get comfortable with a digital avatar and a digital twin, right, et cetera, and the idea that they're conscious, the further away from you humanity you get. And you legitimize those things and you start buying. If we ever give artificial intelligence in any form the rights of human beings as if they are conscious, forget about it. We've lost the battle against transhumanism, and really on the road to quote unquote post-humanism. And that to me is the great danger of these don't get me wrong, you're right. My labor, a lot of people are going to be out of work. I mean, we've had digital avatars as news anchors in other countries for over a decade now in Asian countries. That's been a thing. And it's only going to become more prevalent. So I see your point there. But aren't you more worried about the legitimization of these things as they become ever more human-like, of us losing our humanity?
I mean, on the grand scale, I'm worried about all of the stuff about losing humanity. Like, look, like we've had a society based on human labor. Like, that's going to go away. People are like, well, government might take away my money. The government's going to be the one that gives you your money through universal basic income, because there's nothing that you can do to sell back to the economic system. It's all going to be artificial intelligence. And so, I have to push back. Like, our CDBC's a threat. Not really. It's going to be the disemployment by the artificial intelligence, which is going to be the existential threat. We have to figure out what we're going to do in that kind of world. It's not like the government can take away your money. Your government will be the one that gives you the money so that you can continue, so that life in society can have a semblance of normalcy. And so it's not just the fact that they can take it away. It's that they're going to be the source of delivering you credits that you can turn into, consumable items, like a trip to the ski mountain or something off of Amazon. Those are going to need to be provided for us in the near future. We have to figure out what that's going to mean for us. And I feel that really is the existential threat that we're facing. But unfortunately, I feel, and this is my opinion, that the CDBC is one of these red herrings that basically focuses your attention on something shiny and in your face, when really the sucker punch is going to come from mass disemployment by these very hyper intelligent, artificial intelligences.
It's very yang of you. It's very, very yang of you, because once again, I'm hoping we don't get to that UBI point. I feel like if we do, then we really have centralized ourselves as a general populace into a new techno-neo-feudal society that I don't know that we can get out of. And that does mean transhumanism and possibly post-humanism, because you will not have any right to your persons and property, and that means you are just a human guinea pig, as many people found out they were over the last several years. A topic for another time. Let's talk declassifications. Let's talk documents. I'm kind of giddy like a schoolgirl over the JFK, RFK, MLK documents. At the same time, I'm quite hesitant. I don't know exactly what it's going to mean. I think the biggest revelation from Snowden, most people, it was they're spying on Americans and Five Eyes and they're working together. And I'm like, well, if you were paying attention, you kind of already knew that, except for the name of Five Eyes. You knew they were spying on you. The real revelation came when he said he was looking at classified documents. And normally when you have a classified document, you've got the redacted version that you see, and then you've got the real version. And then he saw a document that wasn't the redacted version. It was a totally fake document in place of the real one. They'd actually manufactured this document. Again, through Smith modernization, through government propaganda in general, there's no guarantee that they won't be doing that with these documents. Couple that with the admission that they just found 2,000 more documents on the JFK assassination that apparently have never been available before and never available to the Warren Commission. Really, if that's the case, what happened the first two times Trump tried to declassify them? There's know where they were? It's like magic, Zach. So when you, and we're going to get to beyond those 60s assassination files, what are you expecting to come out of those documents? Are we going to see any accountability? And by the way, where do you think that the narrative shifts after that? Because obviously something has to come out of them. It's not all... listen, I don't think it's going to be like the CIA did it or this person did it. I think it's going to lead down the paths of people that should have been investigated further and probably are guilty. and point to certain organizations or cutouts, etc. There'll be a little mystique, but they will eviscerate the official versions once and for all. For instance, the idea that Oswald was CIA, that's going to become known. I mean, he was a CIA agent, everybody. I hate to tell you. On top of, trained by the Office of Naval Intelligence. I think those things are going to come to light. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is going to be a little bit non-standard, and I'm open to being wrong, but this is my personal thoughts. So my personal thoughts are that the major disclosure that's going to come out of this, and I could be wrong in a couple hours, so we'll see, is that we're going to find out that the UK was involved. And the reason why I say that is because I feel that there has been a long-term trend going on where the global elites are basically degrading the royal family, like over time, right? Like Harry, it looks like to me as a bastard child that was conceived out of wedlock and therefore not actually one of the bloodline, right? Which is why they pushed him out. You can look at him; he just doesn't look like the other royals. He looks more natural, less inbred. Yeah, and they killed Diana because of that.
And by the way, Harry, a lot of people do like to take a dump on him and Meghan and whatever. I don't even like getting into that, but a lot of people forget that he was so traumatized as a kid that he lashed out at the royal family and dressed up like a literal Nazi for Halloween. Like, a lot of people forget that. You think about that mentality. Obviously he was not happy. And a lot of people don't remember this either. But Dodi Fayed, I believe that it was Dodi's the father, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. He went on Howard Stern. And when he was talking about the assassination of his son and Diana, which, he fought a long time for. And he said that he had talked to both.
Assassination of his son?
Yeah. His son, his son was with Diana when they died in that car accident. So he claimed that she was pregnant with Fayed's child, and he was about to be a grandfather. And that was one of the reasons that they would not allow it. But he also made the claim on Stern that he had talked to both Harry and William, and they had expressed concern about their mother being murdered. And he had even alluded to the fact that they had walked in, I think it was Harry in particular, on Charles with another man. So if anybody can find that old school Fayed Stern interview, I'd love to hear it again in light of this. And obviously you're going beyond just the 60 stuff, and you're getting into the Epstein stuff that we've been promised by Bondi. That's where we need to go next, is the Epstein stuff. We got to take one final break. If you haven't read Google Leaks, look at the quote up top. It's the new HHS Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Zach Vorhies is an American hero. Go get it on Amazon right now, or go check him out over at zachvorhies.com. We're going to take that break. We're going to come back. Final segment of Making Sense of the Madness after this.
If you're about to replace your roof, stop. There's a solution about 80% less expensive. 9 out of 10 roofs can be saved by RoofMax, guaranteed to extend the life of your current roof by 5 to 15 years at a fraction of the cost of a new roof. RoofMax's deep penetrating power restores flexibility and water protection. Nobody wants to replace their roof. Restore it instead with RoofMax for 80% less. Call now for a free roof inspection.
I couldn't give anything a higher endorsement.
I would be remiss had I not include Cardio Miracle on my very short list of secrets.
It's the real deal. It's a real product. It's not another supplement.
I'm operating about 6 to 8 hours, and I've noticed that being on this Cardio Miracle has made a huge difference.
Since I started taking Cardio Miracle, about 8 months into it, the benefits have been fantastic.
If I get hungry, then I just have a Cardio Miracle.
Not only is it safe, but it's necessary to take Cardio Miracle to stay well.
This let me sleep, it's filling up more energy, more get up and go, and it's all because of what this company does.
For me as a doctor, Cardio Miracle is a staple.
Cardio Miracle to me is hope in a glass.
To try Cardio Miracle for yourself and get a special fan discount, go to the host page right now and click the link for Cardio Miracle.
And we are back. So we only got about 10 minutes left in the broadcast. Let's get Epsteined up. You really think that a lot of this documentation that's about to be dropped, and by the way, there's no executive order on this, right? This seems like it's the court of public opinion. It's kind of been thrown in our face. Bondi goes on Jesse Waters, and after saying it was on her desk on another Fox show last week, saying it's going to come out as we record this. Now, this is going to come out a few days after, so who knows? Well, we might have egg on our face afterwards. But you think that they're ready to turn and burn the royal family after all these years?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think they're ready to turn and burn the royal family. I think Prince Andrew, we're going to get details on his escapades on the island. I think that a lot of these leftist people, I think there's also going to be some surprises with these leftists that are involved in this. And it's very interesting that all of this seems to be happening when, the deep state is being, destructed. Tariffs seem to be going up now against our allies and our adversaries together. And what I'm starting to see and realize is that I think we might be at the end of the global American empire, where our petrodollar was the reserve currency across the world. I think that a new system is coming online. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be, crypto-based blockchain money. It could just, live on a database, within the Central World Bank or something. But I think that we're going to have a new currency that's going to come online. There's been, talk of the SDR. And I think what's happening is that America is getting ready to give up the world reserve currency status. A year from now, I could be completely wrong. But that's what I think is really happening, on the back end of all of this. And so the reason why all these deep state people are getting named out is because we need to tear down the old system. It's too bloated. It's a single point of control. Like, people are like, oh my God, the New World Order. It's like, the New World Order happened after World War II, right? Like, the United States has been in control of the entire world. Like, whatever you think the globalists are planning to do to take over the world, like, the United States is already there, right? And so I think that in order for us to unwind this entire thing, I think, first off, the plan is to, change power globally. And in order for that to happen, and when that does, basically the federal government needs to be dismantled and wiped clean and started over. And that's what we see right now. Like, it seems that Trump has absolutely no opposition of any, significant type to his agenda. Like, every single one of his picks, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, like not one single candidate that he's put forward to get nominated has been rejected, right? Like, every one of them has been confirmed. I can't think of one that hasn't gone through confirmation. And so right now what I see is that we're basically entering a new age, kind of like how the 70s and the stagflation, which apparently, like, it was just as bad as it is now, right before the Reagan years. And then Reagan took over. And it's funny, Dr. Drew was telling me this story about how he was sitting around and all of a sudden, all the fear and the dread, he just realized it was over, right? And does it kind of feel like that's where we're at now? Like, the puberty blockers, the women playing on men's teams, or on girls' teams, being able to say, retarded, like, all these freedoms, like, we're in a new
We're
age
back,
now.
baby. The R word is back.
The R word, right? You can say retarded again. And so what it seems like right now is that we're entering a new cultural age. And this is also going to dovetail with the new economic age. And it's also coming around at the same time that the AI age is coming into fruition. So I really do think that this is a once in a lifetime changing of the system. It's mind blowing that we're here. And, for those of you that have been following me, you know that I've been a very deep black pill pessimist. And even me, like one of the deepest pessimists out there, I've never been more excited than what's going on right now. Like I am so excited. It's just amazing.
Zach, you know, I run with that crowd. You know, I'm part of the Independent Media Alliance. I do the forums with the Last American Vagabond and the Whitney Webbs of the world and Steve from Slow News Day. And they're very, very reluctant to give any credit to this administration or Trump. I have to be intellectually honest with myself, right? I'm a huge critic of Musk, as you know, as far as the cuts with U.S. aid and talking about auditing the Federal Reserve and going into Fort Knox. How can I say I don't love that? I've been advocating that forever, right? I would be dishonest if I didn't. The one thing I can point out that I am extremely concerned about, and I hope there is some kind of a roundabout or there are regulations and stipulations behind this that do not let anything escalate beyond what we already have in the Middle East. I like what we're seeing with Russia and Ukraine. Seems like he's finally reining that one in. Very difficult to do. Obviously, hundreds of billions, if not trillions, surround that entire conflict. Basically saying Palestine doesn't exist and giving it to Israel is extremely dangerous, in my opinion. I don't know that a two-state solution was ever going to work, but by doing this and encouraging this behavior, what's to say Israel doesn't go and take more of Syria? You already gave them the Golan Heights. What's to say they don't go into Lebanon? You know they want to. They have been. Iran also has land they think is theirs. Egypt is another place. You give them this, what's to say it stops? You get another incident of Muslim terrorists taking out Israelis anywhere in the world, maybe even U.S. citizens, and then all of a sudden the greater Israeli project or Israel project doesn't seem like a conspiracy theory anymore. That and the entire Middle East is going to be against this on some level, right? This is a big deal. You just don't take a nation state. So what are your thoughts on that? Will there be a real resolution, or is this the place we most have to worry about a powder keg in the Middle East?
Wow, that's a loaded question. All right, so here are my thoughts. First off, I don't see anything really changing within the Middle East and the Palestinian issue. You know, the signal that I would look for to see if there was going to be change would be if we stop funding Hamas. All right, like we are funding Hamas. It's a front. It's a globalist front that basically makes the Palestinians incompatible with Israelis, right? And gives Israel the justification to expand its boundaries through this controlled opposition group. And it's very obvious that they're a controlled opposition group. It's like, you know, Israel will go through and capture like 500 of their senior officials, right? And then there'll be like a prisoner swap where like 8 Israelis of no military value are traded for like 500 senior Hamas, you know, operatives that provide the skeleton to, you know, for this organization to continue, right? Like Israel will give them up for nothing. And the reason why they're doing that is because they want to see Hamas continue to thrive. Now, I don't see this globalist funding of Hamas being cut off anytime soon. So I think that this conflict is going to continue. I think that this conflict is also going to cross over to the border with Egypt. And the reason for that is because the most valuable real estate of the entire world sits right there at the Sinai Peninsula or the Sinai Canal, right? And the reason why is because that serves as the natural bottleneck and choke point between the East and trading with the West. If you don't want to go through the Sinai Canal, good luck going around pirates and South Africa and near the Antarctic, especially in the winter. You know, hope you've got really thick steel on your Titanic-like ship, right? And so I think that a lot of this stuff is gonna spread within Israel. They're going to continue to gobble up the strategic assets of Syria, which they just defeated. I see them pushing west into Egypt and essentially owning both sides of that Sinai Canal so that they can put a global tax on all trade that goes from, between East and West, mostly East going to the West. And so, yeah, and the thing is that they don't have that land yet. So I think that they're going to continue to do their games, blitz forward and then slowly walk it back. Maybe they'll throw on some Trump hotels or something in Gaza City, and then something will happen. Rockets will be fired. Some babies will be killed. Maybe a false flag attack or two, and then it'll be game on again as those people are brutalized. And people think that I'm taking the side to the Palestinians. It's not really, and the reason why is because, look, they're subverted. They've been subverted for now a couple generations of intense globalist directed propaganda. I feel really sad for them and the state that they're in, but mentally, they want to murder Israelis, and there's going to be no peace. And the Israelis are also of that same caliber back to them. Like, they absolutely hate each other. There's no resolution. This is by design, and by having conflict at a murder scale, the agenda that the elites want to pursue is going to be able to be achieved.
Zach, great way to end the show. Everybody go check out Google Leaks. You can also go to zachvorhies.com. You know the drill with this guy. It's not about left or right. It is always about right and wrong. I want to thank you guys for watching me here on Patriot.tv. 5 days a week where the truth lives. I love you, and we'll see you on the flip side.